Hi, everyone. Welcome to the spiritual village of women gathered here from all over the world to share their stories of pregnancy, birth, and motherhood as a way to empower each other through storytelling. I'm Bibi Lorenzetti, and I'm here today with Aurora Brenes, who is a yoga teacher and a full spectrum doula and a free woman. I'm going to let you, Aurora, introduce yourself best. I am so grateful you're here with us today and willing to share your wonderful story.
Thank you. I'm very grateful that you invited me. I am very honored. So thank you for that. My name is Aurora. I'm originally from Panama, and this is where I am right now as well. I lived in plenty places a couple of years ago, but I made my way back home about 4 years ago, and I've been here. I've been here since. This is where I birthed as well, my first baby, and probably I will birth my second. As you said, I'm a yoga teacher. I've been practicing yoga for over 10 years, and I've been teaching for almost 6 now, I think, or even a bit more. And then after my first pregnancy, which we'll talk about more in detail later, I fell in love with the work of a doula, and I took my certification in full spectrum doula, which means that I took training for birth doula, postpartum doula, as well as reproductive health doula. And those are the two main things I practice right now. And I also love hosting retreats for women. I've been doing a lot of that this year when this pandemic thing finally allowed us to get back together and travel inside the country. And I do host a lot of women's circles, both virtual and in person. So those are the main things I do. And
yes, I've been loving watching all your offerings. So great.
Thank you. Thank you. And when a full-time mom as well, just like you, I'm managing all these things and being with my kid at home. So yeah, it's a lot of work.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about, I know you're currently pregnant, as you just mentioned, but I'm really curious to hear about, how your first pregnancy was, if it was intended or if it wasn't, and how the experience was and how that might be different from how this experience is currently.
So it wasn't intended at all. It's actually funny, like the path I'm in now, because I never saw myself as a mother. I was never that kind of girl. Like I didn't dream of weddings, or I didn't see myself with like a family. I mean, I wasn't adverse to the idea, but it was just not my priority. I actually had just recently come back from being in India and Bali and so many places in Asia, and so it wasn't at all in my plan. And then, well, it happened, and it was incredible because something just like turned on inside of me that I didn't know was there, and I just fell in love with the experience. I went all out trying to learn everything I could, and not only about birth, but also like about pregnancy and how my body, a woman's body, changes, and all like the magic, literally magic that happens within us. And that kind of just like led me into the path I'm now. And not only as a doula, but it also helped me connect more with women and realize like, wow, there really is a lot of work to do with women still, to empower women, to connect women to their power, even if they're not pregnant or not looking to be pregnant anytime soon. So I think it's funny because, like I never thought that was part of my mission. And just by being pregnant, like my whole kind of focus of my career or the work I do shifted immediately and super drastically. And it was really a great pregnancy. I do not have the best first trimesters. Neither with that one or the one I'm in right now. I do feel very low energy and nauseous. But besides that, I had a great pregnancy. I was always active. I had a lot of energy. I could sleep laying down until like the last day. And it was in general, it was a very smooth and healthy pregnancy for sure.
Mm. And how do you feel, like, what was your, yeah, go ahead.
Something I wanted to say, because I
Yeah.
think it's very important. I thought I had some fertility, I was going to have fertility issues because I was on the pill for so long in my life that I, like, almost 10 years after being on the pill, that I was way more into yoga. And I mean, this, like, the body starts to speak to you when you
Yeah.
start to connect more with, like, have this mind body connections. Messages are way clearer, and then there was something within me that was like, you need to stop this now. And when I finally decided to, like, drop the pill um, completely and not go back on it, I had like 2 periods in a whole year. And so my body was kind of like finding its way back to its
Yeah.
natural rhythms. And it seems like I'm super fertile. So I think that's important for guys, for people to know,
Yeah.
because I know that's a huge fear women have. Like, if I've been on the pill for so long, how is my body going to react? So yeah, I did like a natural cleanse. I just went off any hormones. And when I was in India, I did some panchakarma and some Ayurvedic herbs that helped my hormones kind of like balance themselves again. So yeah, I have not had any fertility problems after that.
That's good. I'm glad you share that. I definitely feel like that message needs to go out. And you're not the
Yeah,
first one that speaks about panchakarma as a way to rebalance that. There's another woman that came on that I think is a little bit further in age. She's in her 40s, and she had fertility issues, and she did, she took panchakarma very seriously, and it helped her. So it's nice to hear from more than one woman and at different places in life that is something that helps. So that's great.
nice.
So what was your preparation like for, I know that you said that you didn't really have the dream of being a mother, and so that might not have been something that you had already plans for, but how did you kind of construct a dream of birth and labor for yourself once you knew you were pregnant?
Well, I had the opportunity. I was very lucky to have a doula. For some reason, one of the first things I knew I wanted was a doula. I had read about them. Some friends had one in Panama. There's very few. And
Okay.
then I took a course with her and other doulas, and that was like the last course the center gave. So I was very lucky to be part of it.
Mm.
And they have, how most doulas are, very holistic approach. So I did not take like a birth class in a hospital. And I actually took it very early in my pregnancy because I knew it was the last one they were going to give before I gave birth. And it happened to be the last one at all. and and I think that their guidance and the books that they recommended and the questions that they made us ask our professionals kind of like carved the way to the kind of books I was reading and the kind of information I was absorbing. And I I was gonna do a hospital birth always, because Panama has very few options. Actually, there's like one doctor that does home birth, and like
Mm.
everything was so fast. My partner was a bit scared about home birth, and that just wasn't kind of like what I thought I wanted to do. I was like, let's get the best of both worlds. So I made sure I had like a very pro natural birth doctor. I had my doula. I did very in-depth research and didn't choose my pediatrician until I was like 37 weeks, because I knew I wanted someone with my vision.
Mm.
So I mean, I read like Gurmukh's book, in a May's book. So I did all the more like medicine woman kind of
Mhm.
education about birth, and that definitely helped a lot in shaping the kind of
So
birth I wanted to have.
do you feel like at some point, you had all this information going in terms of like almost like intellectually, but do you feel like at some point, because you said that you began early on, do you feel like at some point you paused that to kind of allow everything to sit? You
Yes,
did. Okay.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. And I didn't read like all these books. I was very, I chose, I mean, I also had the app that kind of like told me every week what was happening, but I kind of focused on what I wanted, and that's what I and what was my vision, and then that's how I chose my team. But I tried not to like oversaturate with information, and that's something I've done postpartum as well. I've done some like child raising, like how to raise your child reading, but I'm trying not to overflow myself with information, because I mean that gives you a lot of anxiety. And I just
Yeah.
recently read a post that said like the how many women are going now into therapy just because they're so anxious about all the information they are receiving. And I also had prenatal yoga classes in person because this was pre-pandemic, thank God. And we talked a lot about, and it was with my doula. So she was very present in my whole process, and the prenatal yoga classes were very somatic, of course, and just like sharing experience with other moms was also very nourishing for
Mhm.
myself, and just like grasping onto their experiences and their stories. So I think that the prenatal yoga classes were a good way to like absorb information, but also in a
Yes.
somatic way,
Yeah.
and not only
Yeah.
like in my brain.
Yeah. Yeah. I asked that because I feel like in my own practice, I see that a lot of, you know, women that want to take in all this information, but then there's, yeah, there needs to be that moment where you just then go inwards and trust your own knowledge and your own wisdom. So I always like to follow up with that question so that people hear that, no matter how much you want to learn, it's great, but then also trusting that inside you don't need
But
all
that's
the
why I really like this book from Ina May, because she half of the first half is only like birth stories from
yeah,
women who were in her village.
yeah,
So it's not like how everything's going to be medically, but then you're also like just reading experiences. And I think it's very empowering. One of the things that I really like to do in my work is empower women. Like, this is the information, but I want you to feel empowered, to trust your intuition, to trust your body.
yeah,
And the most important thing is that you are empowered to make the decisions that feel right for you, and not
yeah,
just because you read it in some book or your doctor says so. So yeah, I think
yeah,
that the just trusting part is very important, and I find it that it's very hard
yeah,
for many
absolutely,
many people.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And then, so then whenever you're labor, I want to hear your story of just how labor came on for you, and yeah, just take us through it.
So yeah, I didn't have the birth I dreamed of. But I did go into labor. Actually, I gave birth on my due date, my
Okay.
40th week. Yeah, I was due for January 10th, and my baby was born January 10th.
Wow.
Let's say I started like labor about 2 days before, but it was very, very sporadic. I had some contractions, and then they just stopped. And the night before I actually gave birth, I thought I was like going on into full labor. Like, contractions were speeding up, they were getting stronger. And then I just fell asleep and woke up the next morning like nothing had happened. So my partner was getting ready. I had texted my doula. She was like, "You just tell me when you feel like you need my support." I had texted my mom, and everyone was waiting for like my call. And I just fell asleep and nothing happened. And I woke up the next day, the day before my due date, which is funny because it was a national holiday in Panama, but it was like a how do you say duelo in English? Like, it was we were remembering a day of like a lot
Oh,
of death,
yeah.
and
Like a
it was not a
morning.
happy holiday. It was a mourning
Yeah.
holiday. So it was not like a happy holiday. So like, it's one of those holidays where like nobody sells alcohol, and my mom was like, "You shouldn't give birth this day. Like, there's like, poor your kid that's gonna their birthday is gonna be the 9th of January." I was like, "Mom, I can't control it. So it's gonna be what it has to be, you know." And and then
I
again,
love
like
that
at
you had to tell
11,
your mom that.
yeah, I was like, "There's nothing I can do, you know." Come okay. I I'm so sorry for the kid, pero bueno. So my sister lives very close to me when I was living in the city, and walked to her house. I remember my partner was like, "Are you sure you should be walking this much?" I was like, "Yes, I just need to get this thing started again." Because something I learned that I'm very grateful that my doula said, like, first time moms tend to just like stay at home and wait, and that just like makes you nervous. So I try to like go up on about my day. And then when I was at my sister's, contractions started picking up, and we walked back home. And then around 1:30, the doula came because I was like, "Okay, I already need you." And things started picking up very quickly. Contractions started getting more intense, shorter time
how was
apart.
it for you, like feeling the contractions?
At first, I thought I was like, "Wow, this is super manageable." Like I mean, I was doing all my medicine ball. I mean, the Pilates
Oh,
ball
yeah.
exercises, and then around 4:30, my doula was like, "I think it's time to go." And it was amazing because like it was a holiday. The hospital was shut down, like the part of like the private practice. So everything was super quiet. There were no cars in the street. So we were in the hospital in no time, and super peaceful. But when we arrived there, I was like 1 centimeter dilated. And I don't understand how they didn't send me back home, because they usually send you back home. And bueno, things escalated super quickly. I started having super painful contractions as if I were in like super active labor. I was trying to do no epidural. And I mean, you don't even get an epidural until you're like 4 or 5 centimeters, no? And I mean, time went by so fast. One of the things I was scared, like, what happens if I feel like time going by so slow? But the opposite, like, every time someone said the hour, it had been like 2 hours. I did the whole shower thing, o sea, everything I could. Um, and I never dilated past 2 centimeters. And then my doctor said, like, if you want the epidural, I can give it to you because that might help you relax. And I was like, okay, let's go for it, because I was in so much pain.
Yeah.
So like, and you
And your
could
body
see in
couldn't
the
open. Yeah.
yes, and you could see in the fetal monitoring, because you can see like the contractions, they were peaking super high. So it wasn't like me having low pain tolerance. You could see
Right.
in the machine like things like contractions were going very, very strong. And for being dilated so little, it wasn't kind of like making any sense.
Yeah.
And so, well, I did the epidural that I remember I cried when I got it, like just from like how relieved I felt. And I was able to nap. So that was nice, because I mean, by
So
that
there was
time I was
peace about getting, like, it was your decision and you
yes,
were, yeah.
yes. And I think that's very important, because
Yeah.
I was trying to go all natural, but I did do a lot of like inner work to be at peace if I didn't, no, and to be at peace if there had to be a C-section. But I think that people get into your head, because like I'm a yoga teacher, everyone's like, "Oh my God, you're gonna pop that baby out." And even if I wasn't, I was trying not to like believe them. You do, like,
Yeah.
I was like, this is probably gonna be fast. My mom like popped out her 4 babies. She never had any medicine. I kind of did have that in the back of my mind, no? But I tried to do a lot of like non-attachment work. And when I received the epidural, I was so thankful. I think I just saw the anesthesiologist and I felt better. When I saw him going into my room, I was like, oh my God, I didn't feel the
Yeah.
epidural, because I was in so much pain from the contractions that the epidural was just like a mosquito bite for me.
Yeah.
And bueno, hours passed and there was I didn't dilate. I broke water. My water broke naturally, and not even that. So by almost midnight, my doctor was like, "I know this is not what you want to hear, but it's been so long. You are not dilating." You could see my belly looked like a sand clock, because she wasn't coming down. So like the contractions would contract and she was still up here, and then my belly down here was empty. And what seemed to have happened, I think she was never really fully in position. So her head didn't come down all the way into my pelvis, and her head turned. So she was face
Posterior.
she was face forward and her face was forward. And then afterwards, when I did my doula training, they were literally explaining my birth. They were like, when the face is forward, like this can happen. I was like, wow, you're describing my birth. That's exactly
I
what
had a
happened.
similar experience. Yeah.
She couldn't come down, and my pain was so intense because it's more, contractions are more painful than normal when it's this way.
Yeah.
So bueno, I mean,
So
I
she was
cried.
posterior. She was posterior
Yes,
facing.
but
Yeah.
yes,
So her
yes,
her
but
back was against your back.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
and her face was completely forward. So this is what my pediatrician said when they took her out. She said her face was facing forward, so she was never facing inward. So that's why she couldn't rotate properly.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was exhausted. It was midnight. I had been in this for like a couple of days. It's been more than 12 hours that I was in horrible pain. And when I cried for like 5 minutes, when they told me, I was like, I just have to let it go. And it was fine. I mean, my doctors were super respectful, and my partner was able to do skin to skin while I was in recovery. One thing that I didn't like, I feel like I wasn't present by that time because I had been given epidural before, and then I had been given the bigger dose of epidural for the C-section. So I was in the operation room, and I was shaking. I was like barely awake. So that first, like, I was able to have skin to skin. So I had like the most respected C-section I could have had. My doctor is very respectful with that, and my pediatrician is super pro skin to skin. Hospitals in Panama still we're very behind in this. Like, they take your baby away immediately, especially if you C-section. So my OBGYN took a lot of time in sewing me back up so my baby could be with me. And it was almost up to like 40 minutes that she was able to stay with me in my breast. And she was able to go with my partner the whole hour I was in recovery. And finally, when I came up about at 3 in the morning almost, they brought her to my room, and then we never separated. But yeah, it was intense.
Yeah. So did she breastfeed when she was on you those 40 minutes?
She not so much, but she was on my breast, so they were trying to, they were helping me because I like I said, I was literally shaking.
Yeah.
But she was in my breast, and she did suck a little bit, and she just like stayed there with me. And then when she came back, then she was breastfeeding. The nurse helped me, and it was super funny because my partner had her with him on his chest for like a whole hour, but she was trying to find something to suck on, so they gave him like the cap of a bottle so he could like put it on his chest. It's super funny. I have a picture, and it's the best picture of my birth date. It's him like breastfeeding my baby. But yeah, I'm very thankful that we had that opportunity. Yeah, because hospitals, and in places like Panama, it really depends on the team that you have. Because if it were for hospitals, they just like make it impossible for you because of liability issues, or I mean, they really live like a decade ago. Pero bueno, I'm giving birth in a new and more respectful hospital this time that wasn't ready. Yeah, that was supposed to be ready for my last birth, but it just wasn't. But there's like,
that's exciting.
It's yeah. So that's my birth story.
So I have a couple of questions for you. The first being, how was it for you to be separated from the baby in that amount of time?
It was terrible also because and I've been meaning to like do something about it, but the recovery room in this hospital was terrible. It was like super bright, super cold. There was, I mean, I wasn't able to even like rest. And I was just thinking about in my kind of like zombie mode. I was just like thinking about my baby, and I was wondering if they were able to do the skin to skin because they just
left. Didn't even know that. Okay.
My doctor was going to do everything possible, but again, the hospital has this like stupid rule that he cannot be unsupervised. So my pediatrician had to stay with him, and they had to go into like the newborn area. And she said, if there's no one breastfeeding, thank God this was like very early, like 3 a.m., 2 a.m. So he was able to go in the pumping room with her because no one was using it. So there was this kind of like, was he able, wasn't he able? And I was just very like knocked out from the epidural. And yeah, I think it's terrible to be like separated like that. Pero yeah, it wasn't
Do you feel
pleasant.
like that affected your postnatal experience, or were you able to digest it? And
No, I think it was I mean, besides it being very uncomfortable, it was fine. After
okay,
knowing
good.
that she was
She was
never alone, that kind of like just gave me a lot of peace. And again, I did all this previous non-attachment work and said like, whatever, I'm just gonna make the best out of it, and I cannot like dwell, and that's just gonna make it worse. So, and then she never left the room really. And
great.
but the first 24 hours, but because my partner and I, we're not the same blood group, she had to be put in phototherapy. I don't know if that's how you say it in
Okay.
English.
Yeah, I don't know the word, but yes, something like that. Where they're in the
Because
baby
she
warmer,
had,
where they have to warm them up so that they don't get jaundiced.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So she had a little bit of jaundice that shouldn't be, it wasn't like a level that a normal baby would have been, would, if she had the same blood type as I did, because she was another blood type of me. That's the problem.
Okay.
So my doctor had to put her in this machine for 24 hours. And that was the worst part. I cried all the time. I would go, I mean, I was a C-section, and the next day I was walking because I was like, I mean, there's no way I have to go see my baby. I was all the time like, you can't give her formula. So I was pumping. Luckily, I mean, at the beginning, they don't need much milk, but luckily
Right.
I had a good amount. And I think that was the hardest part, like having her in this machine, because she was supposed to be with me,
Yeah.
Pero I knew it was for the best, because my doctor said we should do this because you don't want to go home and then have her like get worse at home and have to come back.
Right.
So I was always trying to look at the at the bigger picture.
It's so
Yeah.
incredible how, I mean, with all these stories that I've been doing for the series, it's just so incredible the power that we have as women to just like, and you see it repeatedly through motherhood, but even just from the beginning of getting over all of our ailments to be there for our children. It's just like to hear you say that the day after your C-section, you walked because you wanted to give her your breast milk and you wanted to be with her. It's just, yeah, it gives me the chills to just think about it. And I hear it every day. It's just, I don't think we should be given for granted the huge amount, how love can propel us to just move beyond our own limitations, because it's just so beautiful. So
I know, it's
beautiful.
insane.
So then
And
you were able to breastfeed her because of that.
Yes, and they were like, I had to pump. So we came to like an agreement with the nurses. I couldn't have her more than 10 minutes outside of the machine because that meant that I had to leave her in longer. So I didn't want that. But I asked them to allow me to bring her to my chest at least for 10 minutes so I could have her with me, and then also I could stimulate my production. And then after that, I would go pump right next to her, and then I would leave the milk. So we had kind of this agreement where it wasn't like 100% pumping. I could bring her out and then just put her back in, and then just like leave some milk. So she would have more to eat. Yeah, because it was slower for her, especially those first days. They're like, my milk was starting to let down and all these things, so I couldn't like breastfeed her fully. But we had this agreement which worked better than no breastfeeding at all.
Yeah, of course. And then, so how long were you there for, and when did you go home?
So I gave birth Friday midnight, so like from Thursday to Friday, and then I went home on Sunday. So I was three full nights without Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and then I left on Sunday.
Okay. And
we took longer because of her being in a machine, because my OBGYN told me on Saturday you can leave because I was healing very well. Yeah.
Okay. And then you came home, and how was that? How was being home as a mom with baby? And
I was terrified.
Yeah.
I was terrified, but I was lucky. In Panama, we have help is super affordable and super accessible. So I am very lucky. I had like a full-on team in my house that helped me with like house chores, and I did have a lady that I think you call them night nurses.
Yeah.
So I am very thankful because of the C-section and everything, I was way more limited to how much I could move and what I could do. And I mean, I was exhausted just before getting home, because like it had been so long, and the operation.
Well, and all the drugs that your body had to assimilate and release.
Yes.
Plus the stress.
I think that the cleansing from the epidural is intense. It's very intense. I was lucky I didn't get any migraines because I'm very prone to headaches, and I know a lot of people get very bad migraines after having epidurals. But one of my anesthesiologists was amazing. And yeah, I had a lot of support, and I do have my family very close to me. So I was no visits. The only people I was accepting were like my parents and my sister. Yeah. And they would usually come at night because they all work. So they were not all day there with me. But I don't know, it's incredible. You have like this tiny human, and you're like, when I was leaving the hospital was the worst part. I was like, wait, can't I stay here one more night? Maybe I want to stay until tomorrow. I have all this help. I have nurses. I don't know, I'm in a safe place if something happens to her. But yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy those first days. I am not a nocturnal person. I was recently talking about this in a group. Like, I usually go to bed. I am in bed by 9, and I used to wake up like at 6 in the morning. So I like to sleep all night. So this like waking up in the middle of the night was probably the hardest part for me. I had a very good breastfeeding journey, so I never found breastfeeding to be hard. Pero the part of waking up was very, very intense.
So how did you organize for that? Did you prepare before with your partner? Like, did you make a plan for it, or did you just kind of do it anyway and just go through the tiredness?
So I did a lot of postpartum prepping, but I didn't know how the schedule at night was gonna be, so I kind of just like waited for it to happen. And because we didn't give any bottles until after the first month, it literally was me waking up, and then but the baby slept on top of his chest happily, so that was nice because he would take her after I breastfed, and she would fall asleep on top of him. So she wasn't like only wanting to sleep on my chest, so she would fall asleep in his. And again, I had the night nurse, so in times where she was just awake, even if she didn't want to eat, then she would take her and we would sleep. So yeah, because sometimes they're just awake because their schedule is inverse, because they're awake at night. Yeah, because they're awake at night and sleep all day. And sometimes she just would spend like 3 hours awake after she breastfed, and then the night nurse would take her and we were able to rest. So that was very helpful. For sure, like at least the first time around.
Yeah, I feel like the resting part is so key. I mean, I know that, I gave birth at the beginning of the pandemic. And so there was, we came that feeling of like what you said of like, can we stay here one more day? Because we were just going home to nothing and we had no one. So it was just this terrifying situation for me. I felt it very deeply of like, what do I do with this human if something happens during a pandemic? And then I felt like not having organized for the sleeping was, even though luckily Indy's always been a really good sleeper, it was very hard. The sleeplessness, and then how that seeps into everything in your life, like the way you're able to relate to your partner, and the way that you're, just the patience that you have towards yourself, towards, things being messy. There's definitely, I feel like there's less resilience whenever you're sleep deprived. So it's so good that, you were able to get help with that, because that's really hard.
And I think, yeah, and I think that's something I didn't do very well the first time around, and I've learned napping. Like
Yeah.
they say like sleep when baby sleeps. I mean, I would rest. It's not, I wouldn't do house chores or anything. I
Yeah.
was very respectful of my 40 days. I didn't do anything. I didn't go out, nothing. I didn't do
Yeah.
anything, pero I wasn't able to like full on nap. Sometimes you're just so exhausted that you can't nap.
Yeah,
And then I would
absolutely.
like watch Netflix. And I think I've learned with my baby now, especially being pregnant and having a toddler, I'm way better at taking naps. And I've taken on yoga nidra instead of Netflix. Um, so
Good
so I
choice.
think that, yeah, yeah, and I recommend it to my moms. Like, if you can't rest, there's these things that you can do,
Yeah.
and that at least give you like, you close your eyes and you actually get some rest that you don't while you're watching a show on Netflix.
Yeah.
Um, so I think I've become better at napping, and I hope that the second time around I can do a better job at napping when my baby's napping,
Mm-hmm.
when my toddler allows it. She's supposed to be going to school in
Oh, good.
January.
Okay, good.
So
So you'll
yeah,
have a
crossing
little,
fingers.
yeah,
Yes, that she
good.
goes away for like
How
three to
old is
four
she?
hours. She's 20 months right now, actually.
Okay,
So she's gonna be a year in January. So that, I mean, 2 years
2 years.
in
Yeah,
January, and that's when I wanna take her to like
yeah,
preschool.
yeah.
Yeah,
That's good.
and so she can see other kids as well. We
Yeah,
moved to the beach during pandemic, so we're very happy here. She's very happy here, but there's not that many kids around. So uh, I want to take her to school as well, so she
yeah,
can socialize.
yeah, of
Yeah.
course. So I want to talk a little bit about your recovery. How was that for you? What did
Mhm.
you do for that? For your womb recovery, for your scar, for all of that, even emotionally, if there was anything that you needed to work on. Can you talk to us a little bit about your recovery journey?
So like I said, um, I was very committed to my golden 40 days. So I did my whole quarantine thing at my home. I prepared for postpartum a lot. So I did a lot of like uh, vegetable broth, bone broth. I did kitchery for like a whole week, also to help myself like go back to be
Yeah,
able to go to a bathroom. That is very
yeah,
hard. In both kinds of births, like in natural birth and as well as
yeah,
a C-section, because of the drugs, it's very hard. Um, so I did a lot of nourishing foods, nourishing drinks, a lot of rest. Like I did a lot of laying down, even if I wasn't sleeping. I was very careful of being. I iced for a whole month my scar. So every time I was laying down, I did ice. I got do you call it arnica in English as well?
yeah. Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I have a doctor that works with homeopathy, and I made sure I had my arnica in drops. So I took a lot of that to help with the pains, because in the end, even though I didn't push, I was in very painful labor. So I did have
Yeah.
this whole like body, my whole body was in pain. Um, so I did a lot of that, um, breathing, and then a couple of months after, I started going to therapy.
Okay.
So I did do, like, I went back to my psychologist, um,
Mm-hmm.
because yeah, motherhood was, and in pandemic, that's the other thing.
Yeah.
I never went back to like my regular job, which I'm extremely thankful for. Pero
What
it
was
was like,
that?
I work for a local coffee shop. I
Ah,
still do, but now I do some other. I just do like digital work for them, and
okay.
yeah, that's my other passion. Coffee. My family's we are coffee producers and now coffee
Okay.
resellers. But I had a full time like office job, and
Okay.
pandemic started right when my maternity leave was ending. So I'm very grateful I was able to stay with my baby at home until now. I'm still here. but but it was very hard on me. It was very hard on us as like a couple, taking on this like new responsibility. And then pandemic, I lost my job. Well, no, I was suspended. So I don't know if that happened in the US, but many contracts in Panama were just like suspended, so we weren't getting any pay. And it was
Mm,
like, how do now we're all together in the apartment all the time. So yeah, that was, and a lot of like childhood wounds came up
mm,
for me. A lot of things with like my mom, and that she was an incredible mom, but she was never home. She was a full-time working mom, so a lot of like abandonment issues. So I definitely had to go to therapy, and that helped a lot. And that was like 4 months in,
mm.
and I really recommend going to therapy even if you don't
Yeah,
feel, before you feel anything, like
yeah,
becoming a mother is very intense, and there's a lot of like emotional things that you are not expecting that will happen, and then the whole hormone low that you're in just like makes everything worse.
yeah, absolutely. And so, do you feel
Yeah.
like, were you prepared for things to go to be hard with your partner, or you hadn't planned for that? Do you feel like you had like talked about communication and like what your priorities were, or you were just kind of thrown
Yes,
into the mix of it?
yes, but I think I was more prepared for like the hormonal part.
Yeah,
I wasn't prepared for like all the things that this could bring up for either of us, because it wasn't only
yeah,
for me. There were things that were brought up for him as well.
yeah,
And that probably if pandemic wouldn't have happened, they wouldn't have been so intense, because that just makes you
right.
more stressed and worried about like providing, like you have this new creature and you have this new family, and now you have like this whole global problem. But yeah, I wasn't really prepared for like all the emotional things that were going to come up for either of us. And again, our pregnancy wasn't planned. So what my therapist says is like, we had all these like life cycles put together. We
Yeah.
didn't like live together and marry and have 2 years of that before we decided to have children. We kind of like had everything together. And
Mm.
so that also stirs up a lot of like emotional
Yeah.
and intense stuff. So I wasn't, for that I wasn't prepared, and I didn't think about it. I was like, well, we were super in love, we are, and we're super happy together, but there was a lot of like getting used to each other,
Yeah.
and we were never parents before, so there's a lot of like things that come up on different levels. So yeah,
Yeah,
that
the
was.
relationship shifts to something very different, deeper, more beautiful, but
Yes.
also more complex and more,
Yeah.
you're no longer just the object of each other's attention. There's a lot going on. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that us women, like our attention shifts, and
Yeah.
it's just a survival thing, no, like completely to our baby, and there's like, you have to really make an effort to like come back to your relationship,
Yeah.
and it
And I
takes
think
it takes
also it's
effort
like,
and work.
yeah. Yeah. And I think also I don't know if this is true for every woman, but I feel like there's a certain amount of um, like not empowerment, I don't feel so comfortable using that word all the time, but like I feel like once you birth, you feel you're invincible, and that you're like greater than, you created life, and you pushed it out of your body, and like it's a big undertaking. And I feel like, at least my experience was that I all of a sudden felt a lot more powerful as a woman, and I felt very grounded in my femininity in a way that I never have
Mm,
before. And I think that's true for many women that I've spoken to, but I can't say that it is for all. And I think it can be intimidating to the partner, to all of a
mm-hmm,
sudden have a woman that stands in her full power, and that is very like focused like on what needs to be taken care of. And sometimes the partner is not so encompassed in what needs to be taken care of, because you're trying to keep a baby alive outside of yourself and you've never done it. So it's definitely, I think we need to shift the attention on that, and it should be part of the preparation of, including the partner and talking about what it means to feel the power of being a woman, and for what that means for the partner also, because
yeah.
we're
And I think
powerful.
there's also like a
Not
trust.
that they're
Yeah, and
not,
I
they
think
are
there's
too,
also.
but
Yeah, and I think there's also like a trust issue,
yeah,
not only with your partner, but in general, like you are like a lioness. You become this like lioness, no, and you want to take care of your baby, and everything has to be like you want it to be, and
yeah,
and you have to like trust, I do believe that we choose our parents and we choose the people we experience this world with, and we have to trust that they have to create their own relationship,
Right.
and we just, at least me, and I
No,
know
I'm
from
glad you bring
friends
that
and
up.
from
It's so true.
I know from friends and from people I've worked with, like we want to control their
Everything.
relationship to their parents and their relationship to their grandparents, and it's like, and I mean it's survival, but we have to kind of like learn to trust and let go, and that's super hard at the beginning,
Very hard.
especially because we are learning to trust ourselves with a baby. So it's like, I am not supposed, how can I trust you if I still don't fully trust myself? So
Right.
yeah, it's very complicated, but we have to give them the opportunity, especially because it's very new that dads now want to get involved. No,
Right.
this didn't happen before. And then that's the other thing, like at the beginning, I can see it with my baby now, and I'm sure you can see it with Indy, how the relationship with her father just becomes more and more special as they
Yeah.
grow up, because at the beginning you're the only thing they need.
They need. Yeah.
Like they
Absolutely.
need you, and that's it, they can survive without anything else.
Yeah.
And I think also that for the fathers or your partner, that be it father or another mother that didn't birth the baby, or two fathers, I think that it's a relationship that needs more work. It needs
Yeah.
more cultivation. It needs from both sides.
Yeah.
Because at the beginning they don't do anything.
Right. It's not
So
so clear. There's not like a clear task. It's more like, I'm
yes,
here,
yeah,
I'm available, but what can I do? Yeah,
yes.
absolutely. I'm so happy you brought up the trust, because it is, yeah, it's an important thing. And I think also that in order to be able to receive, we have to let go of control, because otherwise we can't do it all, and I think often we might not be able to see what is available unless we choose to trust. And it is so hard. So glad you bring it up.
So hard.
So
It
then,
is so hard.
how was how was it for you to so you didn't have your job anymore, but eventually you found your way into this new work. How was your sense of identity? And like, I know for myself, it was I had a very intense relationship with my Ashtanga practice, and all of a sudden this new person was not involved in the same way, and it took me a long time to reconcile who I was before I gave birth and who I was after, and kind of like merge the two, and let go of labels and just experience. So what was that for you like? Or what was
I
that
think
like for
that,
you?
yeah, that was very hard for me as well. I was not attached at all to my job. I had been there for only a year.
Okay.
And I am person, I've done a ton of stuff in my life. My main thing has always been yoga and like that line of work, but I've always had something else I do. And
Mhm.
I'm very Sagittarius, so I jump around stuff. But um, I had that, to me, it was very hard because I was very attached as well to my identity of like a single person. Not single, I was in a relationship, but I'm used to like picking up my bags and leaving,
Yeah.
and being on my own, and even if it's for the weekend or traveling on my own or moving across the world, I never had this like, I actually was very adverse to being in one place for a long time.
Mm.
So having a family and then going into pandemic and having to literally stay in one place
Yeah.
locked up for a while was super hard on myself and my identity, and I still have some issues with it. I have that I and I've been working, and I think that women with like strong personalities and strong sense of purpose and a career, we really struggle with that
Yeah.
when we become parents, no, because we have to see how we can manage both things, and yes, we're never going to be the same. So waiting for that same person to come back is never gonna happen. She's
No.
never gonna come back. It's this new you. But
Yeah.
on the other hand, it reconnected me to my purpose, because right before the first week of like everything being shut down, when we thought it was gonna last for like 2 weeks,
Yeah.
I remember I was talking to a friend of mine who is a career coach for women. And I did a session with her because I was like, you know what, in a couple of months I want to quit. I know I don't want to, I know I want to be available to my baby. I don't want to be in a like 9 to 5 job or whatever. And I knew I wanted to do my online yoga program, Yoga on Demand. This was before I had to like rush into making it. And I was like, yeah, in a couple months, I'm gonna take my time and make some like nice videos. And then when my contract got suspended, I was like, okay, I was in like survival mode, like, okay,
I
now
need to do it now.
I need to do something. So that was nice because it really like pushed me into doing what I really wanted to do, and then into like going on the doula journey. So I think it definitely put a lot of things in perspective, and like,
Yeah.
okay, what I want to do, if I want to be here most of the time, but I don't want to stop working, you know?
Yeah.
And so that definitely helped me a lot in like going back on my soul's path and just like letting go of things that were extra.
Yeah. I think also it's just so important. I feel like, I don't know if this was your experience, but in my experience, it was like, I almost felt I needed to know who this new person was going to be. And it was very uncomfortable for me to sit in this not knowing, like my body doesn't want to do this, my mind doesn't want to do this, but then who am I? Because I have all of this built around that. And so it was very hard for me to sit with not knowing. And I think, it's important for women, for all of us to know that like we just birthed a human and we are completely different, change from that, and nothing just changes overnight. I mean, everything changes overnight all the time, but like it takes time, just like the baby takes 9 months to come into fullness. Like it takes time to reconfigure yourself, and it probably never stops. But I feel like it's important to understand that like we don't have to have an answer overnight. And I feel like I needed to hear that, and I feel like we just need to tell each other that like nothing, we don't need to decide anything, we don't owe anybody an answer of who we're going to be. And it's so wonderful to see, to see all these other women just like reconfiguring their way, and it's good to hear it, because I feel like something is going to happen for you and it's going to work out, so it's so refreshing to hear that you allowed yourself to to take on, even though you had to rush because you had financial situation around it, but that you allowed for this to happen.
Yeah, and I think that that's been like a big lesson, because being pregnant again was also like,
right.
I had all this like, and I felt horrible for so long, and I had to like put my life in pause. But I feel like this time, my biggest concern was my baby and not necessarily my work. I was like, you know what, I can stop working for 2-3 months, and then I don't know when I'm gonna pick up again after baby's born or what I'm gonna do. And I think that this time around, I'm just letting myself like just flow with it way better than before. And that has a lot to do with like the work of the feminine. We're so masculine, and we need to have a schedule, and we need to have a job, and we need to like, and again, we think there's this like expectation from others of like what we should do, but it's really ourselves, because we've been conditioned, no? And also letting go of identities. I mean, I don't know how long you've been doing Ashtanga. I had been doing Ashtanga for almost 5 years, like very committed. Yeah. I was like full on doing Ashtanga. I went to Mysore. I did study in Bali with other teachers, and when I got pregnant, that was the end of my Ashtanga practice. I couldn't keep up. I felt so horrible my first trimester, and then I didn't have the energy, and it just didn't feel right. I went back to Vinyasa and to prenatal, and I've been doing that. I'm still very Ashtanga based. And even in my Vinyasa training, my teacher used to be an Ashtangi before for a ton of years, and she taught us that. But it was kind of like, in my head, it would be nice to go back to the dedication and like the structure of Ashtanga, but my body's like, no, please don't do that to me. I'm not ready for that intensity. So I just like flowed with it. And yeah, that's something you should learn with motherhood, because if not, you're gonna be fighting against yourself.
Yeah, you're going all again. The time. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think it's important. It's already hard to be immersed in motherhood, to it on top of it be fighting against yourself.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's good to hear these stories for sure. So Aura, what do
Yeah.
you not Aurora, sorry. What do you what would you like whoever's listening to kind of walk away remembering?
Well, no, I think that the first thing is what we said at the beginning, like learning to trust yourself, and that takes work too, especially, I mean, for us that we've been in this yoga journey for so long, it's easier, let's say, because we have this mind body connection more developed. But there's a lot of women out there that don't trust their bodies, that put their full power and trust on their health practitioners or someone else. So I really think that like cultivating that trust, learning how to listen to your inner wisdom, call it intuition, call it to your body wisdom. I think that's the most important thing, because when you are in the get-go of birth, in labor, you are not, your mind is not there. So you're not going to be like, oh, what I read in this book said that, like, so it's really going out and listening to your body and what it's saying, and trusting that you're making the right decision. And also I think preparing is very important, especially we prepare so much for birth, but we do not prepare for postpartum. And I've been working with a lot of moms for as a postpartum doula, and they're like, wow, I just expected this experience to be way worse, and I feel like being prepared, making a food train, or like just writing out chores for someone else to do for you can be very important, because I do read a lot of moms that are like drowned in not being able to shower, not being able to cook, or not being able to do all these things. I'm like, you're supposed to shower, breastfeed your baby, and sleep. Like, that's all you have to do. You shouldn't be cooking and cleaning and doing all these things at home when you just giving birth. So I think that preparing for postpartum is a big one that I would really encourage women to do,
Mhm.
because it's very hard on
Yeah.
ourselves postpartum. I mean, physiologically, and it's something we just can't control. So
Yeah.
anything that we can prepare for, and anything that we can control, just leave it set up before
Mhm.
before giving birth. I think it's a huge help for those first couple of weeks that are very intense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so if someone is wants to reach out to you, how can they best do that? Where do they find you?
So on Instagram is the best for sure. So I think we might have to write this down in the bio, but it's
Yeah, I'll write it down
at
in the comment underneath the video. But if you want to just say it as
at
well, that will be good. Yeah.
yes. So it's Aurora, my name, dot la petite, like
Okay.
small petite.
And do you have a
Um,
website?
yes, so it's the www.petiteyogini.com. It's all in Spanish, so my whole work is in Spanish. So if anyone out there in Latin America or any other Spanish speaking countries, I I'm just about today. So this is super curious that we're doing this today after like all our rescheduling, because today I'm launching my first full online doula program. I've been doing one-on-ones, and now
Wow.
I'm doing
Okay.
I'm doing like my one-on-ones, but I'm doing it with a group, and it's a mix of like live calls and pre-recorded and things you can download, and then some prenatal yoga. So today is my big day.
Congratulations.
So thank you. And
That's
it's only in
wonderful.
Spanish because there's a lack
Yeah.
of resources in Spanish for sure.
That's
So
wonderful that
yeah,
you're doing that. Yeah.
yeah.
Good
So yeah.
job being pregnant, having a toddler, and doing this.
I had been, I wanted to do this for a long time, but I was so focused on like my retreats, and I was doing all the retreats and just taking one-on-ones, and but I knew from a couple of months back. And then when I got pregnant, it was just like a huge download. The first day that I finally had like some mental clarity, I was like, yes. And I
Mm.
started writing down all my ideas, and it was perfect because I was like, yeah, I'm gonna be pregnant with everyone else. So it's also for myself. So
Yeah.
I can connect with other pregnant women.
Yeah, that's great. That's the way you got to
Yeah.
do things. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
All right. So I'll put all the information underneath the YouTube video whenever it gets posted. So everybody will have it.
Super.
Aurora, thank you so much for being here with
Thank
us
you.
today. I'm really, really grateful. And I wish you the best on your journey with this new baby and with current baby and with all your other, work babies and ideas. Yeah. Lovely
Thank you
to
so much. I
connect.
really,
Thank you.
really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.